In a previous video, we discussed how the pitch is traditionally split into 18 zones when analyzing a team, and the importance of Zone 14. However, Pep Guardiola is a man known for not doing things the traditional way, and he has devised his own method of doing this. So, in this video we take a look at Pep Guardiola's 20-zone system. And if you want to keep up with Pep, the Premier League, or anything football related, you can do so through today's video sponsor, OneFootball. It's a great free app you can download through the link in the description to keep you up to date. Traditionally, the pitch is split into 3 vertical zones and 6 horizontal ones in roughly equal segments. However, Pep instead opts for a more unorthodox model, 4 horizontal zones by 5 vertical, but there are more subdivisions within each area. Before we look at the use of each zone, let's examine why he does this. The answer is positional play. Positional play is Pep's preferred way of playing. Often confused with tiki-taka, positional play is less about pointlessly passing the ball and more about trying to develop numerical advantages on the ball in between the lines so that they can dominate the ball in dangerous regions, manipulate the opponents, and create high-quality chances with many forwards looking to convert. As Pep said himself about positional play, it's not the possession or the one-touch passing that matters, but the intention behind it, which is disorganizing the opposition. How do you disorganize them? With fast, tight, focused passing. By having these defined regions and rules, it means that every player knows where he has to be and when. And counterintuitively, playing within these so-called rules actually gives his players more freedom for creativity because they know exactly where their teammates will be in relation to the ball. They spend less time scanning the field and seeing where they could pass, and instead using that time to determine which pass would be most dangerous. In addition, by recognizing which region the ball is in, the team knows which regions to overload and where to make specific runs. So, by having the pitch set up as such, Pep identifies a few key areas. Zone 14 is still identified as a high priority area because, as discussed, most goals originate in this area, as the midfielder can thread the ball into the box, have a shot, or shift the defense in either the left or right direction to disorient them. The wide area is slimmer than in the 18-zone system and is identified as the limited option area. This is because the touchline limits the directions you can play the pass into, as you can only pass infield. However, you still have good passing angles into the channels or crosses into the box. This region is used to manipulate the defense because a penetrating pass into the wide areas forces the defense to shift across and increases the gap between the defenders, even if momentarily, to give Pep an advantage. But Pep also focuses on these in-between zones, or the half spaces, which, as we discussed in the last video, give them the benefits of space away from the congested center that the wide areas traditionally enjoy, as well as the ability to still shoot or pass into the box. One of Pep's rules using this layout is that there should never be more than 3 players in the same horizontal zone, or 2 in the same vertical line. This is to give players options on the ball, because if all players were, let's say, just in 2 horizontal lines, the opposition could cut off all passing options by simply positioning themselves in front of the second line. So, by staggering players, it forces the opposition out and creates more dynamic passing angles. Suppose City were building up in their default 4-3-3. The positioning of the front 5 would roughly work, as there are no more than 3 in a line and no more than 2 horizontally. However, the backline has 4 in a horizontal zone, so if a centre-back had the ball here, the right-back isn't a progressive passing option and could be cut off easily. So, in his first season, Pep used a 2-3 in the build-up, with the full-backs moving higher. However, now you'd have several in a vertical line, as well as 5 in a horizontal zone. So, by knowing their zones, Fernandinho would drop between the centre-backs, the wingers pushed higher, and the false 8s did as well. So now you have 2 in the vertical half spaces, and as we said, the front 5's shape was roughly fine by default, so they do not adjust much. Note that the middle region is the widest, so it could hypothetically be split into an extra zone, but instead extra men are just allowed vertically. After his first season, Pep shifted to a 3-2 in build-up. Walker tucks in as a third centre-back. The wide centre-backs have a lot of freedom, so if the ball is switched wide, they will often shift wide to create 2 men in the wide space. Now, let's move higher up the pitch. Another element of a zone system is keeping both half spaces occupied by his team's most creative players. This will help them as it keeps the opposition's back 4 spread roughly wide. Not only that, but he usually pushes his 8s higher than most teams, as he wants to get them between the lines. If the opposition's midfield drops too deep, City would have too much space to build up centrally, so usually the opposition doesn't drop that deep. So from these slots, the opposition is unsure whose role it is to pick up the midfield and the half space. In addition, it makes them unable to join a potential press, creating more space between the lines. When the 8 has the ball here, the winger stays wide to then run from out to in onto a through ball if the fullback is static. At the same time, the centre forwards and the wingers arrive centrally, giving them many players to get a high percentage chance. But if the fullback does close down the winger, the 8 himself can make a vertical run to get onto the end of a ball, potentially dispositioning the centre back as well. Lastly, they can also create space for the wingers through dummy runs. By pushing high up in the half space, they draw a midfielder as well, freeing a passing lane to the wide area. At the same time, there's flexibility to the system. At times when City look to overload the wide spaces, with De Bruyne joining the flanks, the opposition's central midfielder will go with him, which would then free Aguero to drop into the half space and look to progress the play or have a shot himself from the freed up space. By maintaining players in these zones, it means the players are always relatively close to each other, making it easier to have quick, short passes to manipulate the opposition, while it also helps them counter-pressing as they don't have much distance to cover.